Talking About Horses, bringing you closer to some of the best horsemen in the world for tips, insights, and stories. Listen at home, at work, in the car, or in the saddle. This is Talking About Horses. Here's your host, Patrick King.
Hey there, gang. Patrick King here, and I want to thank you for tuning in for episode number 34 of Talking About Horses. Today I'm pleased to be joined by Master Saddler Mike Corcoran. Mike, thank you so much for joining us here on Talking About Horses.
Thank you, Patrick, for having me on. So this is like a great thing.
Oh, thank you.
I'm liking it.
Thank you. That's awesome. And I've been really looking forward to this chat. And I know when you and I get to talking on the phone, it kind of goes on, and we can can chat for a while. So
right.
So for the folks out there that haven't heard of you, that don't know who you are, can you give us a little introduction, a little bio, kind of the minute version? Who is Mike Corcoran?
Sure. Well, grew up in the horse business. I was very fortunate to grow up. Dad managed a ranch. So I grew up with some really good quality thoroughbred paints and quarter horses. And so I've always been in the horse business. And funny enough, I always really wanted to be a horse trainer. A saddler was not necessarily where I was going to go. But through the years, working with cutting horse trainers, of course, to back up, my dad made me ride an English saddle to work cattle in, because he said, you're going to learn to ride. And so I was very fortunate as a kid to do that, to be able to ride some race horses, to ride with Monty Foreman at a young age for a while, and then, cutting horses, reining horses, did all that, the hunter-jumper line. But during my rodeo career, when I was riding saddle broncs and bulls, the little voice in my head would say, what are you going to do when you get hurt? And that voice said, when you get hurt, not if. So, because, if you rodeo, that's kind of the way it was. And so I was introduced to saddle making, actually, a guy that built my saddle bronc saddle. And so funny enough, I thought about it. And for any people that know who Monroe Veach is or was, Monroe Veach was a really old saddle maker in Missouri, pretty famous, saddle maker. And I met him at a rodeo in Iowa one time, and I went up and asked him if a young man like myself, if there would be a future in saddle making. And Monroe had one crooked eye, so you never really knew if he was looking at you or not. But he just said, son, there'll always be horses. And that's all he said. And it was that kung fu, that grasshopper moment, and I went to saddle making school because of what he said.
No kidding.
And so I graduated from went to saddle making school, graduated from TSTI with an associate's degree in applied science, and so started out as a Western saddle maker, and of course soon realized I made saddles better than I rode broncs, so I pretty much stopped that.
Well, bronc riding to me, bronc riding and bull riding, it always reminds me of the line that my friend Richard Winters, I think you know Richard, he made a comment to me once. He said, I know old pilots and I know bold pilots, but I don't know any old, bold pilots.
That's pretty much it. Yeah, so that's where it goes. And then so I got introduced. It was funny enough. I was introduced working at a saddle shop in Oklahoma. And I was doing English pack repair, because I didn't mind.
Okay.
And so then met with an Englishman that introduced me to the English saddle side of things. And at first I was kind of like, I'm a cowboy, and I'm not doing that. And But it didn't take long because I'm thinking, you know what? At that time, there was a ton of, there's always been a ton of Western saddle makers and saddle guys. But back in those days, there was in America, there was just very few, and they were all going to be back east, any type of English saddlers at all. So I just went, yeah, I can do this. And so I was introduced to saddle fitting. Now, I was always fitting my trees and stuff on the Western saddles I was making, and I taught myself that because that's something that was never taught in saddle making school. You were never taught to fit a tree or a saddle to a horse in the Western world in those days. And so I took it upon myself because it just made sense to me. And so I would take trees and different gullet widths and different bar spreads and set them on horses and look. And because I rode horses and I was still riding all the time, and it's a feel business. And that's what I tell people in this business, because as a trainer, and as a teacher, you and I, we're teaching feel. Right. And that's what we're trying to do. And so to feel how this horse moves and to feel how this horse moves with a saddle that's not fitting correctly. Is that the age we're giving? Is that the saddle that's creating that? You've got to start looking at the whole picture. So, as I can remember the first two English saddles, dressage saddles I ever fit, ever. And as a horseman, I understood conformation, which is what you really have to understand as a saddler is conformation. And not only that, but you have to understand conformation in motion. Mm-hmm. So standing still is one thing, and moving is a whole nother. And then how we affect how that horse moves as well. So, so for me, right away, I started taking dressage lessons right away because I knew I was going to go that direction, and I needed to understand what people were feeling if I was going to be effective as a saddler that fits saddles. And so I did all that, got the opportunity to go to England, work in the saddle shops, make saddles, look at that whole system, kind of how that works, and it's kind of where I'm at today. And I just kept striving and just kept educating myself because then no one was teaching, and so everything I do is self-taught. And so, which I think is a good thing for me because I tell people the only rule that I follow is the rule that horse gives me. Is what's going on with that horse and that feel, and because I got to work on just about every saddle made.
As far as also, brands and styles, you mean?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep, exactly. So different, company dressage saddles and different all-purpose saddles back in the day and different jumping saddles. And so I got to work on all of them. I got to fit all of them. I got to see how things were put together. I got to tear them apart. I got to put them back together. So I got to know the ins and outs of a majority of what's made, which I think really, really helps to understand, what's happening. And so, and why certain trees work and why certain trees don't, and why certain panel systems work and why certain panel systems don't. And so that's kind of where I come from, because I don't feel like I have not been restricted in what I have learned, that's what I feel. Now, I still learn. I've been in this business 35 years. I learn something every day. Every time I put a saddle on a horse, I never at any time think that I know it all, because I don't. I absolutely don't. And I think if we keep open minds about that, and fields. And I've been fortunate to ride from beginning level dressage horses. I've had the opportunity to sit on Grand Prix dressage horses and ride Grand Prix dressage horses. And so I've been fortunate, because anytime somebody go, Mike, you want to get on this horse? You darn right I do.
Right.
I mean, I never refused. I got on everything. And so I remember my first Grand Prix dressage horse, Lady Killer, which was a personal horse, was originally Herbert Rabine's horse. And then a lady bought him, and he came to America. Of course, they had cut him, so he's no longer a stud. Well, I got to ride him. He'd been in the Pan Am Games. Well, this horse, in 1992, this horse was 21 years old. So the lady goes, do you want to ride him? Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like, do you want to drive this Ferrari? Darn right I do. And so what I find interesting is they didn't even ask if I knew how to use a double bridle. She handed me 2 whips, and she goes, oh, he's kind of particular about your legs, so if he likes you, he'll work really good, but if he doesn't like the way you feel, you're not going to get anything out of it. And I'm thinking, thanks for the pressure. Thank you for that pressure.
And good luck, right?
Yeah. But I'll tell you, Patrick, I had an incredible ride. It was the first time I had felt piaffe passage and collected canter. It was the first time that I ever felt a horse with self-carriage. And I have to tell you, and I tell people, because they go, wow, what'd that feel like? I said, it felt like sitting on a bull. It felt like controlled dynamite, and a controlled explosion is what it felt like. And that just got my adrenaline going like you can't even imagine. And
all that potential energy.
Oh, and I changed the way that I fit saddles after I rode that horse, because of the feel that I got from that horse. Because there again, when you first learn and you're first doing things on your own, the thing was back in the day is to lift them in the back, lift them in the back, lift them in the back. Not overly lift them at any time, but you thought more about picking up the back of the saddle. Well, I just sat on a horse that picked me up like I was like a flea or like a fly.
Right.
That just like, it was like I wasn't even there. And I just went, and I felt this horse come together like an accordion is the best way I can describe it. He came together, and his withers just like, and of course, there again, you're not supposed to be looking down. You're supposed to be looking forward and your shoulders back. But as a saddler, I'm looking down.
Sure, right.
I'm feeling this horse come up in front like, oh my gosh, it was incredible. And I just went, I get this. I got it. And so then I started concentrating on flocking more saddles through the middle better, because I was already doing that. But now I'm lifting saddles more in the front than I am in the back.
So that's the part that this horse helped you to realize needed to change?
Exactly. Yeah. And because there again, and he, and he was in they had his saddle that he was in. It was a German saddle, which it was fine. And actually, and so, you know what it did too, Patrick? It allowed me to, as he came up in the withers, because there again, is that I could feel this horse get, even though he was like the accordion, you could feel your legs just kind of come in a little more. So it wasn't like a 55-gallon drum. It was like, how as he came up and got self-carriage, your leg kind of just dropped in there, and you just felt the front of this saddle come up.
Mm-hmm.
And you felt the balance, your balance completely changed. So even in spite of me and in spite of the saddle, this horse was so trained, and because he's 21 years old, and so correctly trained that he just did his thing, whether I was there or not.
Yeah.
See, so I think what it did is it advanced me a few years, because then I just went, oh. So I started lifting saddles, and I started seeing results from people going, oh, this horse is freer in the shoulder, and now this horse is moving, and the lateral work got better on horses. and stuff. And so so I just kind of kept changing and kept adding and kept doing things like that. And it was cool. I'll never forget it. As long as I live, I'll never forget being, because I've never been on another horse like it ever. But it just advanced things for me.
That's awesome. So, to have a teacher like that, that's awesome.
It would be incredible. There again, because my goal is to start a school, start teaching, saddle fitting, and do that. But man, how cool would that be to have a couple of those in your pen, to where you could take your students and go, okay, get on this.
Yes.
Get on this and feel this. And okay, let's put the saddle on that's not quite correct. Feel this. Okay, let's get a correct saddle now to feel this. You can still do that, and I still probably will do that. I just won't have a horse like that, unfortunately.
Sure.
But I think I could still reach the goal that I want in my teaching with that, So
yes.
Because I need to teach the people. I need to be able to teach my students that feel and get the eye for that. That feeling of stuff. So
exactly. Well, and it's hard because there, as many lesson barns as there are, in the country, there's very few that have a large number of high school horses, and so there's riders that are aiming for something that potentially they've never even felt.
Right. Yeah.
So
exactly.
That's a big reason why we travel to Portugal in the winter and take groups of students with us to ride with, the classical masters over there.
Right.
To ride those horses, because then then they get the feel, so then they know what they're aiming for when they go home to their horses.
Exactly. Yes, and it gives you a striving point.
Yes.
It gives you a field to strive for, and and even though I've got my halflingers, and and I'm doing pretty good with them, and doing pretty good with the horses, and so you kind of start to. Okay, can I get that self-courage? And no, is he going to be like that horse? No, he's not.
Right.
They're going to be what they're going to be, and you have to also understand that as well, as a rider. You can't take, like my mom and dad's got a minivan. Okay, that minivan is not going to be a drag race car. It's not going to be a NASCAR.
Right.
It's a minivan, and so you have to understand. You have to just go to the level that horse is capable of, that you're capable of, and that horse is capable of.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what you have to do.
Right. Awesome. Yep. So now you said you started lifting the fronts of the saddles up. Tell me about that. What does that mean?
Well, so when you get on a horse, then you really feel the shoulders, and you really see, like on that horse, for example, I could really see, because of how he was built, I could really see how the scapula worked. I could see it moving, and even though the saddle he was in was kind of A-framey and stuff like that, what I could really see, I could really get a feel and see how much it moved. Now, all horses have a degree of difference, but so what I started to do is because I started to see, I saw saddles that were sitting too low in the front, and stuff, and so as I picked them up, the comments from the riders were, they would just go, wow, where'd that come from? Mm-hmm. And most people weren't realizing what I was doing. And at the base of the wither, what you got to think about, so you have your points of your tree, and then your stirrup bars, or the front of your stirrup bars is two rivets in that front part of that point, and then the other part of your stirrup bar is in what's called the rails. Those are rails, where Western saddles have bars. These are rails in an English saddle. And so basically, if you think about from the stirrup bar, the end of that stirrup bar back, it flexes and gives, because it's a laminated beechwood tree. Well, mine are, and traditional with spring steel. Okay, so that the rails are a little or narrower, and then you have flexibility. So then your panels are giving and your tree is giving, except for in the gullet in the front. So, like you buy a pair of cowboy boots, you buy a pair of shoes, and they fit you good in the front part of your foot, and you have a little bit of slip in the heel. Not a lot of slip, just a little bit. So what you got to think about is that front end of that saddle has got to fit that horse correctly. And then, so you flock that up and lift that, and then through the middle, because at the base of the wither is the only hinge in a horse's back that lifts and lowers. So if you look at skeletal stuff, if we look at how the back is made, that's the only place. You take and tickle a horse under the sternum, and they lift up. You'll see how they get narrower, how the rib cage comes in, they just go boom, and they pop up. Okay, so if a saddle is too wide in front, where the twist is, when we think about the twist of the saddle for humans, but there's the trees right there, so that's the twist. That starts to have more pressure at the base of the wither.
If it's too wide.
All right? If it's too wide.
Okay.
So, exactly.
So we're talking about the engagement, the elevation of the horse's thoracic sling, right?
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. Now, okay, it's not my job as a saddler to assume that you can get your horse's back up or not. That's not my job. See, I'm not, and so I never allow a panel, a saddle to bridge, ever. Because, I fit naturally. That horse is standing there. I fit that horse. I take and I lift that horse's sternum up, and I lift him up to see how much lift this horse is going to give me, how much engagement in the abs, that this horse is going to pick up. It also lets me know where they're at in their training. Because, one of the things too, Patrick, is muscles don't lie. They are either correct or they are not.
Right.
That's it. So what I started doing what I noticed is as I picked saddles up through the middle and the front, and evenly. So when I'm talking about doing this, I'm not like talking about shoving a bunch of flocking in there and doing that. There's a degree of how you do that. There again, we're back to feel. We're back to feel and knowing what that particular saddle is going to give me or not give me. And I'll study a saddle quite a bit, and I'll look and relook at stuff sometimes before I even say anything to the owner, because I'm trying to figure out is this going to work or is this not going to work? Because I don't want to waste people's money. So I'll pick it up through the middle, the front, and I'll go, okay, now get on your horse and let me see this horse go. I want to watch this horse go, And a lot of times, because I didn't see the beginning, so I didn't see this horse before, so basically I only get to see the horse after. Sometimes I get to see him before, but this is basically the only ride I get to see. And I have to depend on the owner, the rider, to say, well, Mike, no, I'm feeling a difference, or wow. And pretty much 9.999 times, they're going to go, wow. And the horse is going to change. And the horse, the first thing they'll say is, wow, it usually takes me 15, 20 minutes to get this horse to stretch down. And this horse just stretched down like right now.
Mm-hmm.
See? And they'll just go, what just happened here? Okay? I just took the pressure off this horse. I just freed this horse up, is what I just did. And so pretty much most of the time now, I do flock the back. I don't lift them. I might firm them, or I might make a panel even. I might make my panels even, which means one side of the saddle is always going to suffer more than the other. Because horses are crooked, people are crooked, and that's what happens. So the saddle follows what that rider and that horse does. That's the idea. And so by getting that whole thing balanced up and allowing that horse to go, and that's what I have to go off of. Now, to get right down to it, I have a thermography camera, and I can do thermal imaging when that saddle's done, when they're done riding, and I can show the owner, the rider, do you see your panels here? Do you see how even this is, or do you see, bridging? So if I do before and after flockings, which I've done, where I go, okay, just go ahead and get on them and ride them, and then 15, 20 minutes, generate enough heat, shoot the panel of the saddle, thermography, save, show them that image where it's not even, block the saddle, block it up, set it up correctly. Okay, now get back on it, do it again, take another thermal image in, and then go, here's before I flocked it, and here's after. And I can show people what that looks like. Now, as a rider, they're going to feel it instantly anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what the horse is going to do. And
they'll feel the difference in the movement, right? In the engagement, in the use of the muscles.
Yep. Exactly. And you're going to feel how much freer this horse now moves through his shoulders, and how much laterally he's freer. See? So, because when that saddle's too low in front, all right, it creates pressure. It does not relieve pressure. So you don't buy a big pair of shoes and put more socks on and think that's going to work. You're still getting blisters.
Right.
So it's the same thing now. The difference being is that unfortunately no one's sitting on our shoulders, or we're not carrying people and wearing bad shoes. So now we're sitting in that saddle. And the other thing is that when I pick that saddle up in front and I balance that panel, my rider now sits more correctly than they've ever sat. Because what's right for the horse is usually always right for the rider. So my customers, the horse comes first, always. They wear it, we just sit in it.
Yes.
And so if I have people that are hollow in the back, so if they're hollow, see what happens when the saddle's too low in front, they get too much dip in their back, the rider does, and it feels like they're kind of driving off a steep hill, so they kind of lean back in their seat just a little more. See, so they're leaning back because everything's going down. You pick the saddle up, and all of a sudden now that rider becomes balanced and over their leg.
Gotcha.
So,
that makes perfect sense.
And to a degree. So see, you can get into a lot of stuff like the way the seats are webbed or cut back heads. I mean, so you have to look at the whole big picture of this. You can't just fix this and go, okay, here we go. And you got to look at the channel for that horse. Is the channel way too wide where it falls off the muscle? Is it too narrow and now we're putting too much pressure on connective tissue through the spine? So, so we have to be able there. So you have to have the channel has to be correct. The whole balance of that needs to be correct. The tree itself, a banana more shaped tree versus a level tree. Okay, so there again, you're not going to fit a banana to a flat table. Unless you squish it, it's not going to fit. See? And so you cannot take a level-backed horse and try to flock a banana-shaped panel and get it to fit level.
Okay.
The other thing, too, what I need to step back for a second is, if you step back and you square a horse up as square as possible, natural head carriage, and you look at that horse, you stand on level ground, all horses, Patrick, all of them, from back to front, their back runs down into the withers. The back does not run up into the withers. The withers can be taller. The withers can be taller than the hips, but you got to look at that line. You got to step back and look at that line of where that back is going into the base of that wither. See, and that's the other thing. That's where people miss that. They go, well, this horse got really tall withers and stuff. I don't care. Don't care. That's not what I'm not even looking at that. What I'm looking at
in that moment, at least.
Yeah, I'll say, now, do you see this right here? See that? Oh, because my horse is not downhill. Okay, that's not what I'm saying is, Look at how the back runs. Look at that. You know, look at how that works. Now, and then I'll take and tickle him under the sternum and pick him up and go, now look at that. Oh, so if you get true self-carriage and you get this horse to carry himself correctly, do you see how that line changes? Oh, and you ride horses where I love dressage. I tell you, Patrick, I'm a dressage fanatic when done correctly. I love it. I think it's the bee's knees of everything when done correctly. But so you can actually have a horse grow in the front end. I'm sure you've seen that, where horses just get taller, and the more correct you do, the taller. You know, well, they get to a certain point. I mean, it's not like you're not going to take a 14-hand horse and make him 17 hands. I'm not saying that. But you can take a downhill dark bar quarter horse and make him look more balanced by riding correct dressage, even though they hate it, because I had one of those. You know, they're kind of like, dude, really?
Well, it's hard work. It's hard work for them to do that.
Exactly. And so see, so those are the things as a rider and as a saddler that I look at constantly. And I feel as well as a rider, as I feel those things. So I think that's what helps me be able to do and fit the saddles the way I fit saddles, and to educate myself the way I have, you know. And that's kind of what I'm after.
Gotcha. So that poses the question then for me, when we're talking about collection, I talk to riders quite a bit about the difference between conformation and anatomy.
Yeah.
Right? Conformation being more postural, anatomy being, but we talk about it as anatomy is the pieces they're made with, conformation is the use of those pieces. So when you're talking about saddle fitting, how do I'm assuming, and I know just from the work that you and I have done together, that we have to take into account not only the anatomy, but also the conformation. How do you go about doing that? How do you go about fitting a saddle to a horse that maybe currently right now is not using his body properly? Are you fitting the saddle to that body, or are you fitting the saddle to more of the ideal use of his body? How do you make those determinations? How do you do that?
I fit the horse that's there and now.
Okay.
I fit what is there, because that's what you have to. Because if I were to try to fit I would have to assume which direction this rider is going to take this horse.
Yeah.
See? So, and I don't know. So I have to fit what's there now. So, for example, all right, so a trainer I work with down in Houston, so she had a lady show up, had an Arabian, nice big, he's 15'2", nice big horse, but he was heavy. He was heavy, his muscling, his neck was upside down, he was just upside down. So she buys a saddle from me, all right? I put this horse on a wide tree, because that's what fit him now. I put a medium wide on him, and I just went, okay, this is not going to work, It
wasn't wide enough.
Right.
Okay.
And I know this trainer, and if this woman sticks with this trainer, I know where this horse is going to go. Now, I don't have the crystal ball, and anything could happen, injuries, whatever. There could be things. So, but I'm going to tell you. And I'm down there at this barn probably every 3 to 4 months. So this lady's with this trainer now a year and a half. Now, within a year, I'm having to flock more through the front and the middle to really lift this saddle up, because this horse, his posture has completely changed. See?
Gotcha.
And so, and these people, they pay a lot of money for the saddle, and now that she's had it just a little over a year, but finally, I just come to the point, I said, you know what, I can't fit this saddle anymore. What do you mean you can't fit this saddle anymore? I said, this horse is too correct in his muscling, and he's gotten better and better, and so I put a medium wide on him. I mean, it fit him. It was awesome. so I said, okay, let's put the medium wide on, and then I'm there, take your lesson, ride the horse, let's just see. Well, I mean, the horse was going good. Now this horse just went even better.
Awesome.
So, and to this day, which has been now, oh gosh, what is this, probably 6, 7 years, 8, somewhere in there, he's still in that medium wide.
No kidding.
So he's still there. Now, and see there again, so here's the thing, is I tell people, and I've done it, Patrick, time after time after time, is that I've had to fit horses in a wider saddle than I had to fit them what was correct then and now.
Yes.
But there again, when training was correct, I've had to pull those saddles, take that saddle away, and put them in a narrower tree.
Mm-hmm.
And every time, when a horse is ridden correctly, Patrick, you never have to put a wider saddle on them. Not ever. You always have to they always get narrower. They never get wider.
And that's because of the learning to elevate the thoracic sling, yes?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
And now you've taken basically, let's say, a couch potato, and you've just turned them into an athlete.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so so you're going to burn body fat. And so what I tell people is that there are weight lifters and there are body builders. And to me, a dressage horse is a body builder. And so when people go, well, this horse he's packed on a lot of muscle. Okay, well, he's actually burned some fat just like people would.
Yes.
And the muscles look more defined. See? So it has a different look. Because there again, if you look at your horse every day, you don't see changes. But you go away for a few weeks and come back, oh my gosh, wow, this horse looks completely different.
Mm-hmm.
See? Mm-hmm. So we get so used to seeing our horse all the time that we don't see the changes.
Yeah, too close to it.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
See? And so, so then sometimes I'll go, if it works, I'll go, you know what, either let me get on the horse or, put this other person on your horse and have you seen your horse go lately? Well, no, I haven't. Okay, here, put somebody else on him. Oh my gosh, is that my horse?
Right,
yeah.
Sure.
See, so that's the other education that I do with all that, and but I've never, ever had to put a wider tree on a horse. Not ever.
As it was getting more fit.
Exactly. Yes.
Gotcha. Well, and that makes perfect sense. I talk about it with students, and I know I've heard you talk about it, is that we are our horse's fitness coach, right? And
exactly.
Just like with us, like you're talking, that couch potato versus, more of an athlete. If I were going to the gym, if I were working out, if I were doing a lot more than what I currently do, if I were to be doing that, my clothing is going to start fitting differently. My belt's not going to quite fit the same. Things like that.
Right.
So it makes sense that that's the case also with our horses as we get them more fit.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly right. Yep. So and making sure that the muscling that you're doing and the riding you're doing is correct. So to that goal, to reach that goal of self-carriage. So in that process, and so that's the other thing, which I don't tell people a lot. Of course, they'll probably hear it now, but
now you're telling the world.
Yeah, the problem. So because I would never be home, I honestly think okay. So the rule of thumb is in the United States we're checking horses twice a year, spring and fall. But I'll tell you honestly, Patrick, I really feel, and I know it to be true, that really horses probably ought to be checked every 3 months, 4 months, that kind of thing. So, but there again, And there again, too, I always kind of check with how much riding that individual's doing, how much time they're spending. Because I do have barns that I just maybe sometimes see once a year, some I see twice a year, but there are barns like the Dressage barn I go to down in the Houston area. I mean, I'm basically at her barn probably every 3 months. And she is now fixing to go Grand Prix with her horse, and I first put on the saddle on that horse when she first started him. And of course, what's fascinating about that is, and he's a really big horse, and he's incredible. He'll blow your socks off. He's really cool. I put him in a medium tree. Now, I told the trainer, I said, people would freak out if they knew what tree I just put on this horse, because there again, they look at how tall this horse is, and the only thing that belongs to me in that horse is just what length of seated saddle I just put on that spot on his back. I don't care if I can walk under his belly without bending over. It doesn't matter. My area is there, but people start to see like, oh gosh, look how big that horse is. But he's still in that medium tree to this day. And he's fixed. And from day one, from when she started riding him to now going Grand Prix, he's still in the exact same saddle.
Interesting.
So, and I've changed up, there again, I kept over the flocking, and then there again, I've done total reflock on the saddle, because basically 5 years and older, a saddle needs to be totally reflocked, because the flocking in there is just kind of worn out. So it's kind of like putting new tires on your car. You can still drive the same car, you just need to put new tires on it. So it's the same example. And so now that flocking gets to the point where it just gets too firm, you didn't have as much give as I want and stuff like that. So I just completely redo it, and it's like a brand new saddle. It's like brand new all over for that horse.
Gotcha.
And then keep up that. So
the flocking has a lifespan, basically.
Exactly. Yes.
Gotcha.
And I use a real wool. I definitely do not use synthetic, because synthetic bottoms out and it gets hard as a rock, and there's just no life in it. So where real wool has a spring back, so it gives and takes and has a better airflow and stuff to it.
So there's more life to it.
You bet. You bet.
Okay.
Yeah. So. Yeah.
Very interesting. Well, now, while we're on the subject of all these things, and I hope you don't mind, but we've got a ton of listeners listening in live, and we've got a bunch of questions coming in. So while we're kind of on the basis of this, I'd like to chat about this a little bit. So you were talking about changing from the wide tree to the medium wide to the medium tree, that sort of thing. A question has come up about the adjustable gullet systems, and I've seen some of those in clinics. And actually was just playing with one the other day because the saddle was too wide, at least based on my understanding, was too wide for the horse, and the adjustable gullet system seemed to help. What's your opinion on that? Because we're not changing the rest of the tree, right? And we're certainly not changing the flocking just by changing that gullet. Right.
Yeah, so, wow. so now, it depends on, so like a Wintec system, I'm just going to call the name, that gullet system, you got bars and you can put in there. And that's a synthetic tree, and so you put different widths of bars. And then you have the kind that are threaded, and then you can adjust them that way. And then back in the day, the threaded type trees the threads would vibrate open and the saddle just kept getting wider.
So the threaded being the ones that you can screw open and screw closed.
Exactly. Take a little Allen wrench and adjust,
Gotcha.
The problem with the threaded systems for me personally is which I have one of those trees, and I showed there's the gullet. There's still too much give and take. Instead of that gullet bar being solid, there again we're back to the shoes that fit you great in the front of your foot. But now, so if I wear a D width shoe, and now I've got and then that shoe widens out to a double E, and so now my foot's flopping around everywhere in there. The shape of the points of the tree, the design of that, you've got all that hardware in there. And so personally, you've got too much stuff in there. You're getting too A-framey in that tree for me. And the adjustment needs to come from the flocking. You need to fit that saddle correctly and stay and flock that saddle correctly instead of doing all that other. Now, I've taken the Wintec saddles and usually people have the wrong gullets in there. Same thing with the threaded ones. In fact, I did one here a while back. It's way too wide, and I narrowed that thing up as much as I could. Here's the problem what happened with that particular saddle is it closed that channel up at the base of the wither. And so when I changed that, because what you're not changing is that you're not changing the twist. So, all right, so if you got a wide horse, why would you have a wide gullet and a narrow twist? You see what I mean? So,
Gotcha.
So if I'm going wide there and I'm still a medium or even a medium wide in that twist area, there's where all my pressure is. There's my tightness right there.
Okay.
So I haven't changed the rest of the tree. I've only just changed the front part of it, and not the rest of it. So I have a problem with that. Plus, the way the channel system is on some of these saddles is if you collapse that up or even close it up, I mean, you're creating pressure there as well. So when I did that saddle for that lady, I mean, I told her, I just went, okay, I'm going to do this, but I'm just telling you right now. And I made her stick her hand in there and feel it, because and I should have just walked away from it, but they were kind of like, it was one of those desperate things, and so I did it. Now, did the horse feel better for a while because of it? Yes, he did. The horse liked it, but there again, it's like a Band-Aid. You don't wear Band-Aids forever. So that's a temporary thing. So I'm one of those that you need to get the right gullet, right panel system, flock it correctly, and and stay away from that stuff. And I've just like the Wintec, I've adjusted them, and back when they were flockable, I used to flock them, set them up better. But if you, I don't know, that gets a little touchy through there. And usually I use a sheepskin half pad, and so there just wasn't enough panels. There's not enough weight bearing. Everything's just too A-framing.
So it's not maybe a terrible idea. It's just not complete. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Right.
Because the whole system potentially isn't adjusting as it would need to.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. It's kind of like turning people loose and them trying to be their own mechanic.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So because there again, they don't understand the conformation of their horse and what's going on. And I'm going to tell you, Patrick, the big thing is, everybody's fitting saddles too wide because they think that frees up shoulders, and it does not. I don't care how you slice and dice that, dude. It doesn't. It creates pressure. It always creates pressure.
Sure.
And it's always going to create pressure, and it's always going to be a problem. Saddles have to be fit correctly.
Yeah.
And I don't care whose name's on the saddle, as long as it fits correctly.
So these ones that we're talking about, maybe aren't great for adjustability as much as maybe they seem or they say. But if they just happen to be, if they fit your horse, they fit your horse. So it's not the bad.
Right.
It's not bad by nature. It just might not be the right fit.
Yes. And I can tell you every time that I've looked at one, I've had to narrow it up. Every single time.
Interesting.
Not one time have I ever had to widen one.
Interesting. Okay, so now then I'm gonna maybe I'll poke the bear a little bit here. What about we see these flexible trees and even the treeless saddles? I guess let's think about the flexible tree. Maybe what are we seeing with that? What are we looking at?
Okay, the whole purpose of a correctly fitting saddle with the correct tree is to distribute weight evenly throughout that horse's back. Okay? So whatever you weigh, whatever you are, that saddle fits that horse balanced and correct. So that whatever, if you're 150 pounds, 160 pounds, 110 pounds, doesn't matter. It's correct. You get a flexible tree, you're not distributing any weight. You're whatever you weigh right there. So you might as well be riding a broken tree saddle, because that's what it is.
Because of the flexibility, it's going to be isolated right over the spot where you are.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And in a treeless saddle, and yeah, there'll be people. But the thing about that is the spine was never designed to sit on. And yes. I do not care what kind of channel system they think they're going to put in there. It doesn't work that way. And when you girth that, the worst thing they ever did was put stirrups on a bareback pad. Because then people started sitting on the horse. We all rode bareback as kids.
Right.
We did. We all did it. We all rode bareback.
Right.
But it's not like but we were playing. We weren't training, and we weren't on them forever,
Right. Well, and the stirrups being on there, that gives you something to kind of brace against. It's just going to drive down deeper into the horse's back, yeah?
Exactly, yes. Now, also think about this. When you girth that saddle down, you're pulling those webs into that horse's rib cage.
Yes.
So that's the other thing you're doing. And listen, I've done thermography one time. I just happened to be at this barn. This lady got off this treeless saddle, and I thought, well, this is interesting. So they had pulled the saddle off, so I just kind of stuck my camera in there, and I shot a picture of the horse's side. Okay, number one, the spine on a thermography camera, white is the hottest.
Okay.
All right, the color white, and then you go red, and you kind of go yellow, and and on down to blue, and then black is like, dead. That's like.
So you hope not to see that one for sure.
Yeah, you don't want to see that. So anyway, so the spine was white hot. White hot. But the most interesting, and I still have this picture, the most interesting thing is the complete outline of this woman's thigh was on that horse's rib cage.
Sure, because there's no pressure disbursement.
Yeah, and she was gripping. She was hanging on. So, so what happened, and it was on a dressage horse.
Okay.
So, can you imagine? Her deal, that particular person was hanging on, not riding the horse, and not being balanced, and not supporting that horse, but hanging onto that horse. So, and it's just not a good idea. No matter what you weigh, it doesn't matter.
Sure.
There again, I don't care what you do. You've got to distribute weight evenly throughout the panel system from front to back, and it has to be balanced. In order for that horse to stay healthy in his back, to be able to collect correctly, to not put pressure on the hocks, and people have to understand is the back does not carry. The abs do. The abs are what picks the back up.
Right.
And so if you put pressure on that back and that hollows out, see, now also then it's kind of like that guy standing at the bar with his gut hanging out, and not the six-pack ab look, and not engaged. And so horses move away from pressure, not into pressure. So wherever the pressure is the greatest, and just like a saddle that's too wide in front, I don't care if you're Arnold Schwarzenegger, you're not going to get that horse lifted in the front end for any length of time.
Right,
you might get a little bit, and he drops. Get a little bit, and drops. And they try it. God bless horses, they try. Mm-hmm. They do try. But then you get into this struggle, and then you get more whip, and you use bigger spur, and why isn't this horse going? And why is this horse's head so high in the air? And why can't I get this horse to reach down?
Yes. Why are we having problems with throughness and roundness and engagement and suspension?
That's it. That is it.
Yeah.
And it's the tack we use, it's the saddles we use, and every single time you fit a horse correctly, boom. And so, which leads me to, a friend of mine, Dr. Michael Guarini, and then Christy Zicola, friends of mine, and Michael, and then Christy is a musculoskeletal lady who's really, really good. This girl's like phenomenal. But I pulled them together, and we did a saddle fit study in California, in San Luis Obispo in 2016. And we, together, the three of us, scientifically proved how saddle fit affects a horse's gait. And we have numbers. We have actual, because my veterinary friends, Dr. Walt Smith being one of them, he's kind of like, he's always like, saddle fitting needs to be more science. And I go, no, Doc, saddle fit is feel. Well, it needs, because veterinarians think science. That's what they do.
Sure.
All right? So, and by using the thermography camera, because he's the one that got me doing that, it was bringing science to the art of saddle fit. So, because I look at saddle fit, there is a feel and as an art. So I've done the scientific thing. So we did it. We did 20 horses. We did 10 English horses and 10 Western horses in a very controlled setup. We established a baseline, and then I coned a 20-meter circle, and I coned it inside and out. So
By coned it, you mean you set the barrier so they couldn't ride off track, basically.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because of some of the riders were barrel racers and stuff like that, and not everybody's used to riding a 20-meter circle.
Gotcha.
But and that way too, that each horse was consistently basically in that same spot in that 20-meter circle.
Gotcha.
See? So to make this as scientific as I possibly could. You know what I mean? And and so we did is I put we let them saddle the horses with their saddles and their pads. I didn't say anything. I just said saddle up and ride. And we did left. We went to the left first, the right second, but we did rising trot and sitting trot left, rising trot, sitting trot right. Enough for this machine, this thing that we were using to read all of this. And we videoed everything. I mean, we got it all on video, and I thermography everything. So what was way cool was the English saddles that I could flock and set up, I did. If the trees were too wide, then I put them in a saddle that fit the horse correctly. All right?
Okay.
And then had them do it again. And I'll tell you, Patrick, when I get these videos out, it's going to just the videos alone are going to blow people's minds, because every horse was on the forehand in the saddles they were in.
Okay.
Every one of them. And what was really, really cool, and you know what, and I think everyone that did the study, that rode in the study, I think every one of them, they all did a great job. But I changed saddles and put the correct fit on, and the thing was, Patrick, in spite of the rider, every horse went from being on the forehand to shifting to the hind end.
Wow. So in spite of the rider, you're saying the rider didn't change what they were doing, how they were riding, what they were asking.
Exactly.
Okay. Wow.
Now, what I found interesting is because most of the horses were used to being on the forehand, what we did find is that now the horses were so not used to being on the hind end, they were weak. And that's
sure.
And all that shows up in the video. I mean, and so I got to get that stuff out, because I'm telling you, just that alone just blows you away. I mean, and to me, of course, it's stuff I see all the time. See, it's stuff
Yes.
I see all the time, but Mike and Christy had not really been exposed to that much saddle fitting, you know.
Okay.
I mean, and they were like, "Oh my gosh!" So I'm telling you, so there it is, and I want to do more. So I want to do more of that because that, I think scientifically that it needs to be done to really show people how important saddle fit, correct saddle fit is.
Well, I like how you said it, bringing science to the art of saddle fitting.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
That makes perfect sense. So there's been a question pop in a couple times now, and I want to make sure that we touch on it. We were talking about the difference between the natural flocking versus the synthetic flocking, and when we were talking about the changeable trees and gullets and things like that. The question came up about the air flocked saddles, and that's something I'm not too familiar with. I've seen a couple of them, but what is that? What are we looking at right there?
Well, so, I think it was in, late 90s, early 2000s, I think. I'm not exactly sure, but so there was a system that came out with these basically air. Originally, that's what came out, these air panels, and they had them to where you could, like your tire, you could add air or, take air out.
You just pump them up like a bike tire?
Yeah, you could. Yeah.
Wow.
And they were separate pillows. I'll have to call them pillows, but you had a front one, so they had them shades, and they had the back one, but they still had to have flocking in certain areas because they didn't quite fit in the panels quite right. But here's the thing. Air bounces. Air does not absorb. Basketballs bounce. Your car, the reason we have shocks on our vehicles is because when you hit a hole, bang. I mean, it just like bottoms out. So air panels on a horse's back is like, it's kind of like walking on a waterbed. You get that floaty feel. It's just kind of like, whoa. And so the problem being is that as a rider, you're all over the place. Your legs are, if you video people on air panels, their legs are everywhere, and that saddle's bouncing. And so what people have to understand is horses, because they think completely different than we do, is that they move if they think something feels like it's coming off or it's really exaggerated in the move, they are going to hold themselves differently in their movement to kind of keep things on. Unless you just get a bronc and he throws you off and that's it. But most of the time...
You're hoping you're not fitting to that.
Yeah, right. So the problem with air is it, and it's front to back. That saddle's constantly moving. And if you try to put more air in it, then it makes it hard. So now if you put enough air to where you don't have bounce, okay, now you got concrete. Because now that dude's hard.
Yep.
See? All right? So that's the problem. And you lose contact with the horse. And so it starts to kind of phase out and, some of that stuff. And quite frankly, with thermography is really bad.
So the proof is in the pictures.
Right. And I used to, and back in the day, I would, people, they'd get that and they'd spend a bunch of money on these saddles and then they just have all these problems and they'd come to me and go, what can we do? And I went, well, we can pull those things out of there and we can flock it with wool. And they'd go, okay. And so I'd pull them out and I'd flock them with wool and that horse would change completely the way they moved. They just, people would, every time they'd go, oh, wow, oh, man, that feels so much better, and if most of the horses were Mr. Ed, they'd have went, thank you, Mike, seriously, because they, and so I used to have a pile of those things, and I finally had so many, I finally threw them in the dumpster, but, and in fact, I think I still have a couple. I still have some, just to show kind of what, what's kind of evolved, but but yeah, I used to jerk them out of there and block them with wool, and everything got better. So air, and so it's one of those things like, yeah, so if you sleep on a number bed and stuff like that, which I have, okay, that's fine, but guess what? Unless there's an earthquake in Texas, that bed's not moving. See? So, but when you have a horse, when you sandwich something like that between a horse and a rider,
yes,
it's moving the opposite direction of what you're trying to do, and it's moving. It's too much.
So it's dynamic in opposition to the movement because of the compression of the air, basically.
Right.
In the spots where there's pressure, there's going to be compression. So that kind of brings me to the thought of a lot of the saddle pads that we see out there, the ones that fill with air, the honeycomb kind of deal, or the one that I've always found interesting is the memory foam ones. And the challenge I've always seen with them, and you can confirm or deny this, but the idea behind those to me seems flawed in that the memory foam is going to compress where there's pressure, or where there's too much pressure. Similarly with the air, where really you'd think that you'd want that to not be doing that.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Well, that's what I just remembered too. Briefly in the air, you take a balloon and you squeeze it. The air doesn't stay where you just squeezed it. Either it went one direction or the other.
Right.
Same thing. So same thing on all these pads is that because the lack of education of fitting and the lack of people to do it properly, then you got to hit the market of pads galore, because now you got people that the one thing I want to make clear about this whole saddle business and pad business, I do not think that anyone in this business intentionally means to do harm to horses. I don't. What I do believe is that the dollar bill gets in the way, and I do believe that some people think they're doing the right thing, but because they do what they do is because they don't understand saddle fit in the first place. And they don't understand, and so people think, well, it works for humans, why doesn't it work for them? Okay, well, that's, there again, it doesn't work for all humans, but we have the sense to, if we don't feel like wearing that day, we don't wear it. Unfortunately, the horse,
he doesn't have an option.
He doesn't have that option.
Right.
So, but yes, you're correct. So whether it's air, whether it's memory foam, whether it's gel, no matter what, is that it's not moving away from where you think you want it to be. It's moving in other directions, and it becomes incorrect. It's just like gel pads. Might as well just say that. But back in the day, horses cannot feel a rider seat through gel. They can't feel it. So, I mean, and I've had absolutely proof of that on upper level horses, that riders that had the gel, and then they would go, this horse wouldn't do his tempo change. All of a sudden he quit doing tempo changes and all this kind of stuff. And one day we forgot to put the pad on, and boom, 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 there they were.
Ta-da.
Okay, you just answered your own question, and there it is. So, and so pads are made up.
Well, then we have the challenge, sorry to interrupt, but then we would have the challenge of the, and Michael Guarini happens to be listening live, and that's awesome because he's putting in little comments and such as we go, and one that he put in about the same time I was thinking of it. Yeah, right, I'm just taking extra credit. It's all you, Dr. Mike. No, but what he typed in about, and it is what I was thinking at the same time, is that the density of the air changes with the temperature, right? Or the mobility of the air, and as well as that would change with the gel. And I've seen that happen with like the memory foam and things like that. They react differently in different temperatures. Right.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah. And that's the other problem. So of what goes on with that stuff. So yeah, no doubt. And you run into that a lot. And then that stuff, And what people don't realize is no matter what that is, it still wears out. It still crushes. Pads still crush. Pads need to be changed more often. And just because you spend a lot of money on this pad, within a couple of years or 2 years or a year, depends on how much time you're spending in something, it's got to go.
Right.
But yeah, so now, the one thing I do recommend, not for all horses, but for, the safe, I'm going to just tell you, I think the safest thing to use, and their thermographies really well, is sheepskin. Sheepskin half pads.
Okay.
Used with a quilted cotton pad, so we're talking dressage, is what we're talking. English, we're talking English. So, works great. And so I have people that have horses that are like in their teens and their 20s, and they'll go, well, you probably don't like that. And I went, you know what? He's a senior citizen. He deserves it. And sheepskin is cooler. It absorbs a lot of shock. So sheepskin actually absorbs a lot of shock, and it's cooler. Wool felt. There again, I'm a natural. I like natural stuff. It works. It worked in the old days. It works now. It still works. And so wool felt. Under my Western saddle pads are real 100% wool felt. And then the sheepskin half pads, for the English saddles, and especially like eventers. Like when I have eventers, I tell them to put that half pad under their jump saddle, even fitted. So I'll fit the saddle and I'll go use it, because when you're going cross country or that horse lands on the other side of that jump, I need a little bit more absorption to absorb that shock of that. And so and it takes care of the horse's backs better that way. And in a jump saddle, you have a smaller panel system. All right.
So you've got smaller surface area taking that impact anyway.
Exactly. Yes. And so so I'm a big fan of that. And there are just some horses that like the sheepskin, so I'm a big fan of that, and that works. And I just stay away from synthetics. I don't go there.
Gotcha.
So.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yep.
While we're on this idea of different things, talking about pads and things like that, what about girth or cinch adjustment?
So when you talk about cinch or girth, number one is when a horse starts acting cinchy and stuff like that, 9 times out of 10 it's bad saddle fit. So the other thing is what you got to remember is girths or cinches only hold a saddle on. They do not make a saddle fit. That's not what they do.
Gotcha.
Not
Sure.
ever. Not ever. So there again, balanced saddle, girth hangs, we're good. I angle my girth forward. I look at the horse's rib cage. I look at where that elbow is. I look at that area where a girth goes. And I'm sure you've seen it to where some horses just have a small area. They have a small flat spot, and that rib cage kind of bells out and really comes forward in there. And so, and you got to think, the ribs move. So as the horse is moving, the ribs are moving. All right? So if you girth a horse too far back, or you try to go by this thing of, well, it needs to be straight down from the D, or it needs to be straight down. No, it does not. It does not. You can angle that girth, and mainly because if you come straight down on that rib, that horse is going to push that girth forward, and then it's going to be loose, and then the saddle's going to move.
Right. And then you're riding him from underneath, and, that never ends well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's kind of like, yeah, and that's not lifting the ribcage up very good right there. But so girth-wise, there again, in an English, like in a dressage girth, or even a long girth, but let's go with dressage. So I like elastic, but I like a quality elastic, not a cheap elastic, because the problem is that it's kind of like a rubber band. It keeps stretching, no matter what you do, no matter how tight you tighten that thing, it's just loose. It's just always loose.
Yes.
And so you end up going, it just gives way way too much. And so, and roller buckles so that doesn't cut on your billets. Plus, I like a roller buckle because it's smoother. You have a smoother pull with that, and you don't jerk it.
Right.
You know, and so I tell people all the time, the only two ways that a horse gets girthy is, number one, if you start that colt and you cinch that colt up and you pinch that colt day one, they're going to remember that, and that's always going to be an issue.
Sure.
You know? And most of the time, you're not going to have very good luck getting on that little booger because it's going to, you know, be bucking like crazy. So you want to kind of ease that up in there, and then saddle fit. Those are the two reasons that a horse is girthy, because the horse relates that girth to how bad that saddle is going to be fitting on top. That's the way they think. And so, you know, and to prove that point, you know, sometimes what I'll do is everybody's always girthing their horse up on the left side, on the near side, correct?
Sure.
Well, when I go fit saddles, and they're always telling me, you know, Mike, this horse is just a little bit, you know, it's a little bit girthy. And so I'll attach it on the left side, but I start girthing them up on the right side, because horses are right and left brain, correct? So, and then the horse doesn't react at all. And they'll go, and they didn't even notice that I was on the right side. The human didn't. And they'll go, wow, that horse didn't react at all. And I'd go, do you not see where I'm standing?
Right.
You know, so it didn't relate to that yet. And so there's things like that. So I'll get to where I kind of teach that horse to trust once you get that saddle fitted and stuff. And then the correct length of girth. And, you know, you want the correct thing. Western, so English girth, I still like a leather. There are some mohair girths out there. I'm not a big fan of too many synthetic girths. You have to be careful of those because there again, thermography-wise, there's a tremendous amount of heat, a lot of friction.
Yes.
There's a lot of friction. So we're a good leather girth with a little bit of give, you know, on an English saddle. That's always good. Roller buckles, nice and smooth. Western saddle, I'm a mohair guy all day long, or anything natural. So
yes.
There again, no rubber girths, no nylon latigos at all.
Right.
Because you got to think about a horse breathing. They got to give and take in the breathing. And if you have nylon on them, and see, and I can remember, this is how old I am. I remember in the 70s when nylon latigos first came out. And I was riding colts for a guy, and so I thought, wow, okay, nylon, you know. So I bought, you know, near side, off side, flat nylon latigos. I remember they were like yellow or something. But anyway,
yeah.
And I'm starting colt. I saddle up my first colt with my brand new nylon latigos. Holy mackerel! I mean, that dude, you know, I mean, and I would always leave a horse a little loose, and that horse went to pitching, and because they started to swell up, you know, with the way they were bucking, it got tighter and tighter. And this horse got to bucking, and this is before I got on the horse, see? So,
thank goodness.
And I'm thinking, really? Wow, that's just crazy. And so, you know, on my own, I went, okay, so I pulled them off, and I put my leather ones back on, and now I had to really talk to this horse.
Right.
Snugged him back up with that leather and led him around. That horse never bucked. Not one time. Not one time. And I stepped up on that little dude and rode him, and I went, so that brand new set of latigos, I threw them in the trash can.
Yeah.
And so I've been there, done that. And that also helps in my experiences of what I do with my saddle fitting and as a rider, and you know, because I've done everything that everybody else has done.
Made all the mistakes.
I've been through the same thing.
Perfect.
So those kind of things are, you know, the mohair, they're again very important, but the biggest thing is, and then too, there's a nerve, there's kind of a nerve that runs, you know, on horses, and you'll see pictures on the internet or on Facebook, and actually some of them that I see on Facebook or like I've seen on the internet, they actually are showing them too high, and it's actually a lot lower.
Right. I've seen that graphic that you're talking about where they drew it on, like photoshopped it. And yet, what I find interesting is you can actually see that. I think they were talking about a vein in that case.
Yes.
But you can actually see the vein in the photos significantly lower than where they drew them on the picture.
Right. Yeah. Well, exactly. So and so you want your cinch buckles above that, and so there again, you don't want to be. You got to figure out a nice balance, a nice length. The problem I see is everybody's buying way too long a cinch.
Yes.
Way too long. And when you girth up, you're getting way too close. So Western-wise, we're talking now. Mm-hmm. We're getting too close to our girth ring. So there's got to be a good gap in there. A nice balance.
Otherwise, you end up with a wadded ball of latigo.
Yes.
And then you do run the risk, the way I understand it, of coming right on those crosses of the muscles in their connections, right?
Yes.
Which can certainly be a challenge. I know the question that comes up often, and it's popped up here with our live viewers, is about the neoprene cinches or the neoprene girths. And I know myself personally, I used to use them a lot. A big part of my business when I was starting out was starting young horses and troubled horses under saddle, and I started, a couple thousand in 10 or 15 years. And starting out, I used to use the neoprene cinches or the neoprene girths because they seemed so much easier to clean at the end of the day, disinfect them in between each horse, things like that. But what I found in western Pennsylvania, at least, with the heat and the humidity through the summer, I found that they would burn. They would gall a lot of the young horses that I was riding. Not all of them, but a lot of them.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
When I switched to mohair, I never had that issue.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and you can clean your mohair. I mean, in fact, I used to, when I was riding colts, I used to disinfect them. I used to use a pine sol, because I carried like 4 or 5 cinches. A girth, and so I was constantly rotating. And it's funny, no one taught me that. I don't know, it may come from my mom, because she's just a lot neater and cleaner, and so, I just thought, well, it just made sense to me, and so, some of the cowboy guys that make fun of me, but I, like you, when I did that, I never soared a horse up.
Right.
So yeah, but,
very interesting.
So, and the neoprene tends to grab hair. I think it grabs too much hair as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I wonder if that was what some of the galling was that I would experience in those days. So the question here has come up a couple times also, and it's one that I hear in clinics fairly frequently when we talk about saddle fitting. The questions pop up about gaited horses. Do you have a lot of experience fitting gaited horses?
I have fit, some gaited horses, and been on just a few, just to kind of get a feel for them, Pasafinos, and some foxtrotters, things like that, back in the day.
Gotcha. And those horses, I mean, their anatomy is completely different, right? Their spines are completely... Right. I'm playing devil's advocate and poking the bear here, because I kind of think that's a bunch of BS. They're born with a similar skeleton, the same skeleton as every other horse. But the idea is that to make them gait, you have to fit them differently, even though the brochure for the breed says they're naturally gaited.
Oh, you read the brochure, do you?
Maybe I'm poking the bear a little too hard there.
No. Well, and mules, and I made saddles for mules too. So, so the thing about, so there again, Patrick, it's correct saddle fit. It's all about correct saddle fit, and there again, you're looking at the conformation, and so they're not a difficult horse to fit. You just the right tree width and correct, and sometimes the majority of them are pretty level through the back. Some of them are a little dropped in the back a little bit, but you have to fit accordingly. But but they're, again, gated-wise, yeah, you want them to be able to move the shoulders and then be able to have some swing in their back when they're moving, and because they just move a little bit different. There again, if as long as you don't have a saddle that's too wide and creating pressure through the front end, then they're going to move a lot freer. And if you're sitting there balanced because the saddle's correctly, then it frees the horse up. So that's.
I think that's a big key to it also, is the sitting there balanced part, rather than the legs shoved out there in front of the rider in that kind of chair seat position that you unfortunately you still see taught, even though we kind of know, we again, going back into the science of things, we know that that's wrong to be in that position for the horse's entire body.
Right. Yeah, because you're moving too much pressure back, too far to the back, instead of being over your leg. And there again, as dressage riders, as you are, as I am, and as the people other people I know, is that it'd be like when I see somebody on a motorcycle, and I'm thinking, and I don't ride motorcycles, and that's fine if you do. But the thing about it is, when I see them there, I'm going, golly, guys, can't you just be over your leg a little more? Wouldn't that be safer? So as a rider, I want to, everything I'm on, I want to be over my leg. So if that horse trips or spooks or whatever it does, I'm there instead of trying to catch up.
Yes.
If they lunge, if I'm already sitting to the back and that horse takes a lunge or something, the problem is now I'm already out the back door instead of being able to just be right there and responsive to that movement that horse just made. So, and that's the way I think, and that's the way I fit saddles to be balanced, and try to help horse and rider out both.
Mm-hmm. So basically, we're talking that the saddle has to fit in the same place on a gaited horse as it would fit on a warm blood or a quarter horse or a thoroughbred or whatever you have. Not the idea of shoving it ridiculously far down their back, or not forward over their withers or anything like that. Should fit in the same, essentially within the same area as any other horse.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
Perfect.
Yeah. I just wouldn't. Yeah, I wouldn't be any different. And like I said, I like Pasafinos, which are pretty cool. That was kind of fun. That was fun to get on. Kind of like. And I remember the first time I got on one, okay, now try not to help the horse. Don't just sit there. Okay.
Yep.
And then they just kind of like, do. Now it's kind of like, wow, that's way cool.
Right. Yep. Just sit there and stay out of his way. I've got a couple different Pasafino barns that I teach clinics at every year, and they're pretty cool. I keep telling them if they make a 16-hand model, I'll be a Pasafino owner. Oh, goodness. That's awesome. So when it comes down to it, we can talk about saddle fitting all day, and we can talk about the science behind it and things like that. What about me as an average rider, an average owner, checking a saddle for fit? What are some of the things I need to be looking at? What are some of the things I need to think about?
All right. What I have people do is a lot of time, most of the time, because I can't be everywhere, unfortunately. Star Trek, there's not a beam yet.
You haven't figured that science out yet?
Yeah, no. And anyway, so what I have people do is I'll say, because in the process of, sending me pictures, is that I'll say, okay, I want side shots of the horse with no saddle, left side, right side. Those are the main two shots. Number one, I need to see what's going on, but I'm hoping that it has that horse owner look at that horse differently. See, because now I'm making them aware of stuff. Then I tell them, all right, put the saddle on without a pad and snug it down with a girth. Don't sit them on their back without a girth, because that doesn't work. All right, so snug it down.
It doesn't work, and that's because of the pull of the girth itself?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's just kind of sitting there. So it's kind of like, you try on a pair of shoes, but you don't lace them up.
Okay. Yep,
you gotta go, oh, yeah, that's not bad. Okay, then run in them. Oh, oh, they're
Sure.
not on my foot anymore. So,
Right.
or lace them up. And so then I had to tell them to snug it with the girth, step back, and take those same pictures, take those side shots again. And in the picture, you're going to see whether that saddle's pulled down in the front, kind of what it's doing, where it's sitting. And so I'll have people check that. And then so if I'm telling people about saddle fit and to try to feel, because there again, Patrick, we're trying to teach feel, because it's kind of like, okay, when I half halt, how much of that half halt, how much do I do this, how much, so it's the same thing in saddle feel. So when I'm standing there, I'll go, okay, like in the front, because I'm always looking at the front more than I ever am the back, I'm just going to, so I'll say, okay, the idea is to give people an idea of what's too tight or not too tight, is that if I put my hand between that horse and the front of that saddle, the front of that point of that tree, I need to be able to get my hand in there. Is it tight with my hand in there? Yes, it is. It's snugger. But if I cannot get my hand in there, that's too tight. So if I have to really push, or start at the top, start at the top of your gullet and start running your hand down that front end and get a feel, and so I'll go, okay, are you too tight at the top right there? Oh yeah, and then as you come down it loosens up? Yeah, okay, well the tree's too wide, Well, how do you figure that? Okay, well, all right, so there again, because we don't have video here and we can't show live pictures, so if you just say on an English saddle, if you flipped it over and you saw the panel, the front of that saddle, and you see how much of that panel is, and you got to understand where the end of the point of the tree stops, and that's the other thing, and that gets into a whole other subject. Anyway, but your weight, you have just so much weight distribution. So think about where the top edge of your panel is, up in that gullet. Come down just a little bit, and sometimes if you lift the flap of your saddle up, you'll see the point pocket that point is put in, that it's sitting in. Some
yes.
saddles you can, some saddles you can't.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I want all of that panel. To work. So basically, I want that wide-bottomed running shoe. I want all of that on the surface of the ground. I don't want to feel like I'm running in a pair of high heels. So,
sure.
and so basically the tree that's too wide, you're only going to catch the top edge of your panel. You're not going to catch the rest of your panel.
Gotcha.
Just the top edge of it, all right? So if you get your hand in there, when it's girthed down, it doesn't have to be like tight. It has to be snug.
Mm-hmm.
And get your hand in there. This is without a pad, because it takes, number one, it takes less to pick up the front of a saddle than it does the back of a saddle. So just by adding 2 pads to a saddle, always picks the front up more because of how the horse is built and how things work. So without the pad, if I run my hand in there and I'm like, oh man, I'm way tight here, and then as I run my hand down, it gets really loose, then you kind of go, oh, I want a consistent feel of my weight distribution. Past the point of the tree, it just hangs. That's not weight distribution at all. It just hangs there. So it gives you an idea of feel, and then come up underneath underneath your flap and your sweat flap along your horse's back, and run your hand across underneath there. And does it feel like your hand could just like go all the way over the top of your horse's back, or does it stop at the edge of your fingers? So it'll kind of give you a little bit of a feel, and if I put this saddle on and I push the front of this saddle down at the pommel, just with my hand, does the back of that saddle pop up? And anytime a back of a saddle pops up, it's too wide in front.
Okay,
So
sure.
So, now, I have to clarify something on that, because there again, because I'm always saying, when you're riding your horse in the rising trot and the back of that saddle's coming up, there's a difference, and there again, had a video, if we had a way to show that. So some horses kind of come through, or some horses kind of just come a little more leg movers and not back movers, but just hit the ground a little straighter. They're going to bounce a saddle in the back.
Yes.
So, you know, and especially if you don't have your horse put together and you don't have him supple and giving in the rib cage to where that back starts to swing, that saddle's going to bounce. All right? Fit or not fitted, it's going to bounce. So there's a difference. And so what you want is, just like I saw a lady up in Illinois, you know, I'd block that saddle up and stuff like that, and of course the horse wasn't put together, so I told the lady on the ground, because I knew what they were thinking. And I said, so you see how that saddle's sitting there, and you see kind of where it looks like it's lifting? And she goes, yeah. Okay, if you look again, I said, the saddle is not lifting up in the rising trot. What you see is when she sits down and it gets back up, she's hitting, in the sitting part of that rising trot, she was hitting a little too hard. And as she came up, it bounced it up.
Okay.
So you have to look at that. Plus, there's other things that I could show people too. I mean, if I were showing them, but you know, sometimes the blocks on certain dressage saddles, as in the rising trot, they're hitting him with their upper thigh, and they're pulling the saddle up in the back.
Okay.
But the main thing is the feel. So yeah, so just what they can do is put the saddle on their horse, snug it down with a girth, no pad, and start running your hands and start feeling it. And run your hand down through the pommel and feel both sides of the wither, you know, through there. And can I open my fingers? There's degrees. So it's going to get a little tricky. And some people, we're trying to teach a feel. But,
right.
People just need to get in there and just kind of experiment with things and just look at stuff. Or watch somebody ride your horse.
Yeah.
And look at how that, and take a look at things, you know.
And that is challenging because so many riders are used to sitting there feeling it, but not seeing it, like you said.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And so the idea would be to make riders more aware of their own saddle fit instead of, and that's one of the things I would try to teach. And when I'm fitting saddles, my thing is teaching. I have no secrets in this business. I don't have, because my job is to do the best job I can to take care of that horse's back. I mean, that's my job. Now, the rest is up to you. I'm not in charge of your feeding, your training, anything else.
Sure.
That's your deal. I can only do so much. You know, I can only just kind of get so much in there. So, and so you want to look at that saddle is going naturally too wide, front to back, front to back, front to back. And here's the other thing. People will say, well, it's not really going front to back, it's going side to side. Okay, it's going side to side because it's not fitting right in front. That's why.
Okay.
That's why. A saddle that fits correctly on a horse's back does not move. It doesn't. Side to side or front to back. It does not move. And that's so that's what you have to look at. So and so that particular rider that said, wow, it's moving from side to side, so I flocked it, I set it up. Okay, get on there and ride that. I said, is that moving side to side anymore? Oh, gosh, no, this is really great. I picked the front up, through the middle, even the panels, done.
So when we say it's not moving, we mean it's not moving out of sync with the horse.
Exactly.
Okay.
Moving with the horse. And the panels give and take, absorb shock. And the tree flexes and gives the way it needs. And so you have to be careful of, and that's English. Now, Western, because English saddles were designed not to use a pad. All right?
Right,
So
originally, yes.
Yes, originally. And originally in the old days, saddles were serge panel. They weren't leather.
And the surge panel, that's the wool base on the panel, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, and so instead of what sits next to the horse or next to your saddle pad, instead of that being leather, that's a wool. It's a wool serge material. It's a very the serge panel is well over 400 years old. I mean, it's a very old system, and it's like way cool because it's cooler in the summer, warmer in the winter, and sweat doesn't crystallize in wool; it flakes out. You know, so it stays nicer, and so you have that. Now, in a Western saddle, we have rawhide covered trees. Well, some guys use fiberglass, but rawhide covered trees. Then you have your leather skirts, and you have sheepskin stitched to that. So it's usually like what they call a three-quarter bark wool, and so it has a give to it. Okay, so Western saddles were not designed to ride without a pad. You always have to use a pad or a blanket system under a Western saddle.
Gotcha.
So now, for me, I'm back to my felt pad, my wool felt pad.
Mm-hmm.
And then so my give and take, my shock absorber is that felt pad. That's my shock absorber.
So that becomes your surge panel.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes. And so, and I'll tell you this too, when we talk about this, whether it's a Western saddle, the Western pad, or an English saddles, all English saddles settle faster in front than they do in the back. Because there's more going on in front than there is in back.
Sure,
now,
with the movement of the shoulders and the potential elevation of the thoracic sling and all of that.
Right,
Okay.
yeah. So, now, yes, naturally we want back movers and not leg movers.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, does the back move? Does the back move and back? Yes, it does from side to side. But because of the balance of stuff, it's always, and how a horse's conformation is, it's always going to settle faster in the front. In a Western saddle, the Western pad is always going to crush faster in front.
Yes.
So
for the same reason.
Exactly. Yes. Yep. And there again, Western saddle fitted correctly, more weight distribution from front to back. All right, so more weight distribution and stuff like that, than an English saddle.
Okay.
So, and so that's what you got to look at as well on the fit of stuff. And so there again, pads. Like if you're out there, you're riding a lot, that wool felt pad that you spent almost $200 on, probably in about 2 years is probably done.
Yeah,
and
depending on how much you use it. Sure.
Exactly. Yes. Yep. And to prove that point, I turned their pads around and put the back of the pad to the front and saddle the horse again and go sit in that. And they'll go, oh.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Very interesting. I know whenever I was riding a lot of horses with doing a lot of the colt starting and things like that, and riding 10 and 12 horses a day or more, I was going through a lot of pads every year.
Yes.
For sure.
Exactly.
For sure.
Yep.
Cool. Okay, so in general, if my saddle doesn't fit properly for my horse, I think it's a whole different idea if we're talking about fit for the rider. We're going to talk about fit for the horse. If my saddle doesn't fit properly for my horse, what are some of the more commonly seen issues that we're going to have come up?
If the saddle's not fitting the horse.
Yes.
Well, we're back to, if we want to, like dressage, for number one, that horse is not going to be as forward. He's not going to come up. He's not going to, have the self-carriage because the saddle keeps him there. Or you're going to see where the horse kind of rounds about. He gives you a little, and then the head comes, and the horse drops out, and then gives you a little, and he drops back out. Mm-hmm. Because he can't consistently stay up because of what the saddle's telling him to do in the first place.
Gotcha.
So you got that lateral. There again, laterally, leg yield. Okay, man, he's really sticky. You've got you've got that going on. Or, he's not been in his rib cage, or because he's not really getting his front feet out there, he's not really reaching his full potential in his stride, then you got clipping of the hind leg, or the hind leg can't come through because the front leg's in the way.
Gotcha. Okay.
So you definitely, you have, that stuff going on, is the biggest problem. And then it's only a few horses that really get, most horses just don't get that violent about stuff. I mean, some get to be a little bit more knot-headedy and stuff, and so...
well, we're breeding them to be a lot more compliant these days.
Yeah. Right. Oh, yeah.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. But, so you just... the horse is not moving the way we're wanting him to move. It's sticky. It's just sticky. Like you've got no power steering fluid left in your power steering in your car, and you have to really kind of, it's just not going the way you want it to go. So, the horses are always, they just tell you. And the other thing too, if you pull a saddle off a horse, you'll just start to see some atrophy in the muscling, and how they, horses, what's interesting, they kind of, a horse, I'll tell you, saddles aren't fitting. A horse just doesn't have a soft look. Not only do they not have a soft feel, but they don't have a soft look. They have a tightness in their muscle. And then you're constantly having to do, muscle work, and you're constantly having to do chiropractic, and then, of course, mainly they're going to be sore at the base of the withers all the time. They're just going to be sore there, and their energy level is just not going to come through. And once you have a saddle that's fitted, I think what's really cool, because I get to see horses, I get to see them, and then come back in 2 or 3 months and see them again, So they're going to look completely different to me. But horses that are fitted correctly and are doing right have a nice, soft look about them. They have it's kind of like they take a breath and they just go,
Okay.
And they just kind of relax, and the muscle, their whole tone is just a softness about the way they look, which is really cool.
So they just look more comfortable, which makes perfect sense.
Right. Well, yeah, exactly.
Another challenge I think I see quite frequently, and I know it's one that you and I actually worked with when you came to visit at that clinic I was teaching, is the throughness in the back, and then the one that was great was the consistency in the contact. As they could move through the back and really be consistent through the, like we say, the back movement versus the leg movement, and everything striding through right. If they can come through behind, generally the contact is much more consistent.
Right. Well, what's cool? I'll tell you, Patrick. So when you were, and we should have done more video is what we should have done.
Yes.
We just really missed a great opportunity on that. But for me to see you actually work for the first time, and you're standing with that particular horse that day, and you're kind of doing that, with the bit. Now, I could already see her leading the horse down that saddle was a bad fit. But there again, as you know, I didn't say a word until I was asked.
Right.
So I don't do that. But anyway, what I watched is that you took the bed across the bars and you relaxed that horse. And what was so cool about that, and it should have been videoed, is that horse lifted his back. Now, nobody was on him. You were on the ground doing that. See? So, and so I just thought, oh man, I should have, kicked myself for not doing that. And so you could just really see him lift. Now, when I forget if the owner got on or you, but that horse's head, you could not get that horse's head out of the stars.
Right, exactly.
See, that horse wasn't, there was no way. And so then the opportunity came for I think the next day to let's try a different saddle, and there again, we should should have videoed that, but the change in that horse, and how you could feel which shoulder was moving, and where this horse was stuck. That was just way cool.
Yes.
And I mean, there was such a difference night and day in the 2 different days. There was just, incredible. And the fact that you let that horse just stay long and low and just not pick a hole anytime soon, just let him feel that saddle, let him feel that correct feel, and he responded so quickly and so well. It was, that was just way cool.
And I still talk about that moment all the time when I talk to people about what I now know, which is very limited yet still, about saddle fit. But I talk about how, when we got that horse in the saddle that fit him much better, feeling the way he started to experiment with his own body, to feel the lifting of the back. And then I think if I remember right, I was verbalizing as it was happening how I could feel him experiment with each one of his legs, moving a little bit differently. And, it's to me, it's a selling point for making sure that the saddles are fitted constantly. But, feeling that horse in one session with proper saddle fit basically make a 6 to 8 month training jump, right, in improvement of movement and comfort, relaxation, and what seemed to be understanding just within that one fitting of having a saddle that he was able to properly move within.
Right. And what was great to see was, and it was great that you were gone in first, is, I'll tell you what was really, really cool, and there again we kick ourselves, is to see him reestablish his balance.
Yes.
He tried to figure out where his balance was, because he had been so restricted and so, and the horse had a heart of gold, and he tried really hard, and then that saddle fit was just like that other one, previous one, was just so bad, and he did the best he could in spite, and he just, but to see this horse try to figure out his new balance, and then the great thing was that you allowed him to figure that out, and not just like, okay, let's go to work. You gave him lots of time to kind of figure out, and it was like where the left front was, and then you could see the right front, and then you could see the hind left, and oh my gosh, and you could see this horse instantly go from a leg moving horse to a back moving horse.
Yes.
And the fact that you could feel that, that was just like, that's one of them moments, you just go, angels are singing and stuff's coming,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so that was, that was just like wake. And, there'll be plenty of opportunities for that kind of stuff to happen again, to where we can actually stick a video camera on that.
Yes.
And really be able to, people need to see that. And I think they would understand the saddle fit, because there again, you just let that horse figure it out. See? So you just, you stayed within balance, and you let that horse just figure out where his new body parts, were, and that was just awesome.
Yeah, that was so much fun. I think we need to put it in our schedule somehow, maybe next year or something like that, to find a chance to do some sort of clinic, event, something together that we can get on video, all these changes of working with the horse, because it's, it's, I'm going to go back to what you had said about, the in-hand work that I did, even in the poor fitting saddle, the in-hand work, you could see the horse lift his back, you could see him trying to feel and find a better balance, but then once the rider was up there was just way too much restriction because the saddle wasn't properly fitted. So the horse knew where it was possible for his body to go, but he wasn't able to get there because the saddle was too restrictive.
Yeah. Well, and to also let people know that's listening to this is that we did put the rider, the owner, on the horse. And the horse stayed. The horse was still getting it, and the horse, and of course you had to kind of help her kind of ride this horse a little bit and turn loose and stuff, because she was used to riding the old guy, his old way.
Right.
Now he has this, so now she has this new feel. See, so now there's this new feel, and she's kind of like, whoa, wow. And, so then you were allowed to help him. And, what was cool about that is that, people could go, well, you had a professional on, and naturally he's going to do this. No, not necessarily. No, we had the owner on, and she did a great job. She did a good job, too. And, so that whole picture was just incredible.
Yes.
So,
yes.
And that's what we're after. So, there again, I can't stress enough about proper fit and proper balance, and then, and some of that also not only in the fitting of the horse, but the construction of the saddle itself with how a seat is webbed and how things are balanced, because you can fit a saddle on a horse, but if the top side for the rider is not webbed correctly and the seat's just not quite right, you can still run into a few little issues a little bit and stuff. So, what people have to understand is that there's a lot of saddles out there. Everybody has their own idea of what they think works. Number one is, and there again, and I've told you before, I am not out to pick on any saddle companies whatsoever.
Sure.
What I pick on is saddle fit. That's what I'm after. I don't care whose name's on it. Doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is that it better fit that horse correctly is what needs to happen. That's what needs to happen. Because we're all built different. As humans, we're built different. As horses, horses are horses. I mean, yes, they're all conformation and they're all different, and you have to look at that. And then as human beings, we're all different as well. So I've got to take care of that horse and then make sure that rider also can be useful in the saddle. That it can, support the rider so that they can support and help the horse.
Right. Well, and like you said, it doesn't matter whose name is on the saddle. It's like going back to your analogy earlier of the running shoes. It doesn't matter if it's, ASIC or Reebok or Nike or some Walmart brand, right? If it doesn't fit you, it doesn't fit you. It doesn't matter the name. And if it fits you, it fits you. It doesn't matter the name.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Awesome.
Yep.
So that's going to bring me back full circle to your idea about the saddle fitting school. I hope you don't mind that I just pulled that one out there, putting you on the spot.
Well, for me, unfortunately, we get older. So now, for a guy I still got a lot of energy, and I still absolutely love what I do. When a horse is fitted right and that horse is moving, and I see a big smile on that person's face, there's nothing better. There's just nothing better than that. And the other thing being is not for just that moment, but consistently that way. See, not just that day, but for the next 3 months or 4 months or whatever. It depends on the situation. And so it's hard to get everywhere in this country, naturally.
Sure.
And as you know, because you're behind a wheel probably more than I am actually, but I used to put 60,000 miles easily on a year on a truck, easy. From one end of this country to the other. So it's come to the point where I realized that I do need to teach, and I think I've come to the point where the biggest issue for me was I knew I was going to have to slow down in order to teach. And for a long time, I was not ready to slow down because I just go. But I realized that now the opportunity is there. It's coming up for next year. I'm hoping, and I'm going to do some experimenting with some students, but to try to, put some people out there and try to try to have a good, proper education and backup, and a good and a backup system, because I feel like, that people out there are, a lot of these people are not getting the backup because, I'll tell you what, Patrick, there's a lack of skill in this business. It's a skill is what it is. And the way, and I have colleagues of mine, David Boot and Lucy Batchelor, they're in the Hamptons, good, and I've known them for, it seems like forever. And David, just to mention, David Boot is he's the last of the London saddlers, so he's not a Walsall guy. Now, probably if anybody listening out there that's a Walsall guy is probably going to go, what? But no offense, dude. But anyway, so he's 50 years in the trade, and so I'm 35 years in the trade. So, so what's that? We're definitely over 100 years of experience, not to mention his wife Lucy, who's probably better than both of us. And so we have that skill set, that's out there. And my wife helps a lot, and so she's really good at helping out as well. And so we have a good system, and so we're going to be able to teach not only to fit saddles properly, but also, to repair if they want to repair, all the way up to making saddles. So we're not limited. And the one thing I need to stress to people is that I'm a saddler that fits saddles. I'm not a saddle fitter.
Gotcha. Yep.
Okay, so so I can go in and out of these saddles, and because I've learned I can make them. I know what goes in them, and I know how they're put together. So that's some of the things we can teach as well, and then we can back them up. So there needs to be yes. So people that hopefully have the passion I have for that those are the kind of people that come along that want to learn, and it's hard work. I'm telling you, Patrick, there's nothing easy about this.
Right.
I mean, I can sit and flock a saddle, and people and people kind of like, wow, that's but it's still hard work. It's still hard work. It's like watching a plumber or electrician come over and they fix this pipe and it took them no time at all, and you're thinking, wow, that was easy. But then they went to school.
Yeah.
They've learned, they've apprenticed to do that. And so we want to have apprentices, do an apprentice program and do a training and try to keep the skill of saddle fitting and being a saddler alive. And so that the idea is that people enjoy their horses, and we have horses that are not hurting, and we have, riders, that are having more fun with their horses. We're not going to be able to solve it all. No, we're not. I mean, but you have people out there that can do the work and be, because people are calling me all the time, and I just can't be everywhere.
Right, sure.
And so that's hopefully what we can do, and get some people taught. And of course, there again, I've stayed away from it for a long time just because, I don't mind putting out my own fires. I just don't want to have to be putting out other people's fires.
Yes, I totally get that. Yes. That's so true. That's so true.
Yeah.
Well, I think the school sounds like a fantastic idea, and I've said it to you before, and now I'm going to just make the announcement public. When you decide on the dates and how you're going to do that, sign me up, because I want to be there. Simply from a knowledge perspective, I want to learn as much as I can about this, because I've seen the changes that have happened when the saddles were properly fitted. And I'm not saying that I'm going to go out there and fit saddles, but I want to learn more about when they're fitting properly and when they're not, because that seemed to me to just be a priceless thing to know.
Well, I have some trainers that I've worked with for years. I mean, I have some trainers like down in Houston and Oklahoma and in Minnesota and Illinois. And so, I mean, I've got people that have been with me 25 years. that have been in my saddles 25 years. And the majority of them, because they've been around me so long, is that I've taught them, kind of what to look for. They know what to look for, and so they know when to fold a hand towel. So if they get somebody new coming in, I always tell my people, don't be saddle salesmen. That's not your job.
Yeah.
Your job is just to teach. But what I've taught them is to, like, some of them will have some hand towels handy or a certain pad handy. And if somebody new comes in, they'll take a lesson, and they notice right away how that saddle's not fitting correctly. They won't necessarily. They might go, let me just do. I'm seeing something here, so let me just fold this down. Let me just do that, and then because they've picked that saddle up in the front and balanced it, and then this horse goes really well, and these people have a tremendous lesson. It just made that trainer look like a rock star.
Right.
I mean, really, because. Now they're kind of like, oh, wow, and then they'll go, okay, you need to call Mike and, and da-da-da-da-da, whatever, and do this. And so I really, truly believe that if trainers like yourself and clinicians like yourself, stuff like that, would take the time to do that, how much better things would get.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm telling you, there's some of these people have the reason that these trainers have certain people that have been with them a long time is because that's what they did in the beginning, and they've just stuck with that trainer because they're going, well, she spotted that right off,
Right.
And so yeah, and I think it's great, and and I look forward to really working with you some more, and really, because I like what you're doing and stuff like that, so I think it would work out really good, and it'd just be good for everybody, and the clinics you do and the people you see would just go, wow, cool.
Right. Well, and we definitely need, as we said, we keep kicking ourselves for not getting that stuff on video. We need to make sure that we do that for sure.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah.
So
right.
That's awesome.
Yep.
That's awesome. Well, Mike, I think you and I could probably talk all darn night about anything. We could probably solve all of the world's problems here if we talked long enough. But I want to absolutely be respectful of your time. So if you're ready, I think I've got some wrap-up questions here that I'm curious to hear your answers to.
All right.
All right. So if there was one specific thing that you could recommend for riders to focus on as a primary means of improving their horsemanship or their relationship with their horse, what would that be?
Ooh. Eyes on the ground.
Ah, cool. Very cool. Eyes on the ground. I like it. That's so true. It's yeah, absolutely. Eyes on the ground. And it's funny because I hear a lot of times people say, oh, well, so-and-so's a trainer. Why do they need lessons? But gosh, the highest level instructors and trainers that I know probably get more lessons than anybody else I know.
Exactly.
The eyes on the ground. That's so true.
Exactly.
That's so true. Perfect.
Yep.
If you could ride with anyone, past or present, who would it be and why?
Well, I'd have to say I ride with Lori Headland, who's in Oklahoma now. I've been riding, I think, with her 6 years. She's Spanish riding school trained, very classical, probably one of the nicest people you'd ever meet. Very positive in her teaching, and definitely knows what she's doing. And she doesn't beat me up too bad. She takes care of me, actually.
Good.
But I'd have to say, I would probably, her. There's another trainer down in Montgomery, Texas, Nancy Hines, her as well, probably. And I have to say, not to give you a big head or anything, not for you to swell up or anything here, dude, but after, because we met, and this year was the first time I've ever seen you teach or ride a horse.
Yeah,
you know?
right.
And I have to tell you, I'm really impressed. And so you would definitely be on my list, I'd have to say.
Well, thank you. The check is in the mail.
You know, and actually I've told Lori about you and stuff like that. I think she might have looked at your website and stuff. But I mean, I've told a lot of people about you, but you know, and hopefully I'm not, you know, there's other people, but those would probably be my top three, and hopefully nobody's gonna like call me the next day and go, "You didn't mention me."
And everyone else, right? We'll just pick D, right? And everyone else.
But you know what? I have to say though, real quickly, that no matter what, you can learn something from everyone.
Yes.
You keep an open mind, and it's something I learned as a youngster, and whether you agreed with them or not, you learn their way, and what you could use, you keep, and what you didn't use at that particular time, you just put in a file cabinet, because someday you're going to need it.
Yep, absolutely. Stick it in your back pocket and hang on to it.
Exactly. Yes.
Yep. Awesome. What is your present personal definition of horsemanship?
A good understanding of the horse you're on, really connecting with your horse, I think all horses need a support. They look for a hand. So I'm not a big fan of I like polite contact. So I'm looking for a polite contact, a good connection with the horse that I'm riding. You know, a whole balanced picture would probably be my idea of the horsemanship, and that's whether it's dressage or Western dressage or you know, anything, any equestrian event you're doing, whatever your thing is. I think if you and your horse really connect and really kind of, you know, that your dance partner and you are really connected there, I think that's my idea of good horsemanship.
I like it. Very good. What book are you currently reading, or what was the last book that you read?
That's been a long time ago. Because I'm so busy. I actually, golly, what is the title of it now? Because I have it. Probably the last book I read, Colonel von Ziegner. I don't know if you ever knew him or not. But,
No.
So I had met him, and Colonel von Ziegner wrote 2 books. Oh man, now that you ask me. And so the second one, the latest one, his last one, which I've had for like a really long time, was probably be about as far as that goes, probably about the last book I've read. And now I'm trying to remember the title of it. Probably what I'll have to do now is I'm going to have to get it out and take a picture of it and put it on Facebook. So everybody knows what it is.
There you go.
You know, but it's almost like a beginning. It's a book about beginner horses, and Colonel von Ziegner wrote the Pre-St. James test that was used in modern 3-day eventing, and awesome horseman. I mean, he was a great guy, and I got along with him really well, and stuff like that. And but I like his book. I like, you know, I use some things from it. You know, I've used a few things from it for when I've taught some clinics and stuff like that, just because I like it so much. But so I'll find the book and take a picture of it and put it on Facebook so everybody gets to see it.
That's fantastic. And I'm wondering if that might be the one that you lent to me, actually.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you know what? the blue cover with the blue cover. Yeah,
Yep,
that's probably
you bet. You bet. See, so I'll take the blame for that. I actually have it sitting just out of arm's reach right now, underneath a pile of other things, so I can't even see the title of it. But that one is definitely. I am still trying to finish that book. It's not a very big book. It's not not an arduous read. But I just in my last 5-Bit Friday newsletter that goes out, I did a little bit of a review on that book because it is fantastic. It's great, and I definitely recommend it for everybody.
Yeah.
So I really like his idea of the training tree versus the training scale. I thought that was pretty cool.
That was cool. And I have to tell you briefly. So when I very first met him, it was at a clinic in Bastrop, Texas. He would go. They would get him in down there, and he was in his 80s then. And they introduced, and so the owner of the place introduced me, to him, and he got up out of his chair and came over and shook my hand, and so he was kind of like, so he goes, so you are the master, and I went, oh no. When I get to be your age, then you can call me master, but I am way too young to be the master, and I did get to ride with him once, but the one thing I remember most about him is I asked him one time, I said, so Colonel, what's it going to take for the Americans to win a gold medal in the Olympics? And he goes, they need to learn to ride the corner.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I love it.
They need to learn to ride the corner. And I went, so how do you ride the corner? It's not that I don't want to tell you. It's very hard to explain. There again, it was back to a feel.
Yes.
It was back to a feel. And
Yes.
so I tell people that every now and then, And so a lot of times, so when I'm riding, I try to ride the corner.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I did. I just reached out and found the book. That was The Elements of Dressage, a guide for training the young horse by Kurt Albrecht von Ziegner. Flash that up on the screen for any of our viewers to see that. Absolutely a fantastic book. Not a huge read, not very thick, but a lot of great information packed into that one. So awesome.
And you can use it for any age horse. Any age.
Any age and any discipline, too.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly.
Yes.
Yes. Yep. So.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to steal a question from another podcaster, Tim Ferriss. If you had a giant billboard to print any message you wanted on for the whole world to see, what would that message be?
Wow. What kind of followers do you have, man? Wow. Is it horse related or anything?
Oh, it can be anything. It can be anything.
Oh man, what would? Oh,
I was secretly hoping whenever I asked you what the last book was that you read, I was kind of hoping that you weren't going to tell me something like 50 Shades of Grey or something like that.
No. Yeah, C-Spot Run. Oh gosh. You know what? I think billboard wise, it's a hard thing. It would be great, and if there was, it probably is said a lot, and it's kind of overdone, but it would be good if people really got along, and I understand this world's it's a difficult world, and there's a lot going on, no doubt. But it would be, to have to be nice to one another, to be polite, to be nice to your horse, to kind of understand, kind of what's going on, with your horse as well. But just to be, just try to be polite to people and understand that, this billboard's getting kind of big.
Very tiny print.
Really tiny. So then they can't read it, and so then they're kind of like, what'd that say? just got along and try to make, this planet we live on, for the short time that we get to live on it, better.
That's awesome. I think that's great. Okay, so one last one here to put you on the spot. So when I do these broadcasts, when I do a lot of the video broadcasts that I do, I end them typically with what we call a question of the day. And the question of the day is just, honestly, most of the time it's a random question that pops up into my head, and it may or may not even be related to the video that I've, to the topic of the video I've discussed.
Right.
But when I have a guest on, the guest gets to ask the question of the day, and this is one that the audience is going to answer in the comments section here. So I'm going to turn it over to you. What is the question of the day that we ask the audience?
Oh, wow. I'm trying to think of what would my question be? To the audience. Okay, yep. To the audience. Wow. I'm kind of stumped on that one. To the audience. I'm trying to think of what. I think. Okay, so my question would be. I guess in your equestrian journey, as an audience, in your equestrian journey, what are the main things that you look for in either your instructor to be, what you might look for in the saddler / saddle fitter you're looking at? I mean, just I think would probably be some of my question on there, if that makes any sense at all.
Sure.
What kind of like, I mean, everybody's going to have a different answer. That's the one thing about that. But I think if there's a one common answer, it'd be interesting to see in the thread kind of like what the one thing everybody is looking for in their journey as equestrians, as horse owners, would probably be I think a pretty good question. I'm hoping.
I like it. No, I like it. I'm looking forward to seeing the answers that folks pop up here. That's fantastic.
Because it's as you as a teacher at what you do, and me doing what I do, we're running we're running across different people with different ideas, but in some sense they're really all kind of joined together in a way, and you just have to see what that is. But without getting like way too deep, might be getting deeper than I want to get. But anyway, and I'm not drinking either, so there you go. That might be for one of those little wine deals that you do.
There you go, right? I finished my glass of wine about a half an hour ago, so.
Yeah, that might be also a thing I'm going to have to think about. But yeah, I think that would be my question.
I think that's great. I think that's fantastic. All right, well, Mike, thank you. Thank you so much for joining me for this. This has been a fantastic conversation. This has been just so much fun.
Oh, I'll tell you, yeah, this was way cool. Just way cool. I liked it. And so maybe one of these times if we can, once you get kind of this set up to where you could do a video setup, wow, you could kind of, it could kind of really go places as well.
Totally.
But, I like all these you do, Patrick.
Well, thank you.
I think you're doing an incredible job, and I like that and stuff. And I've told people, and I'm sure you have too, but I'm going to tell your public out there, that one of Patrick's things is to kind of like have a Spanish riding style school in America, and with different trainers, basically kind of in the same threads of systems, maybe kind of things. Nothing too far out there, but I think that would just be like way cool as well. So
that is something that I kind of see on the horizon. You know, it's far away. It's far away, but
right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we're going to have a saddle fitting school as part of that whole deal. You know, so lucky I know a guy.
Yeah, right. Oh man.
Oh gosh, that's awesome.
This was great, Patrick. Thanks for asking me to do this, because this was like way cool.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's taken us long enough to get it coordinated, so I'm super glad that we finally did. That we finally got this all put together, and I'm really, really looking forward to the opportunity to do live videos and things like that with you, and, you know, potentially that idea of, you know, some sort of clinic or event where we do the horsemanship, the dressage, and the saddle fitting, because I think that's going to just rock the world.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, okay. To keep the education going. You know, the riding and the saddling as well. All of that, I think. So everybody enjoys their horses a lot more, and you know, taking really good care of them and stuff. So
absolutely.
I think that's it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Awesome. Yep. All right. Well, I'm going to close this out. If I could have you hang on for just a minute, I will be right back with you there, Mike.
Okay.
Gang, I want to thank you so much for tuning in to episode number 34 of Talking About Horses. I really appreciate you giving Mike Corcoran and I your ear for this time. Please remember that if you've missed any of it, you can access the full broadcast through Facebook, YouTube, from iTunes, or by streaming directly from my website by accessing the Talking About Horses page from the Education drop-down menu. Through whatever platform you're listening, please be sure to give us a rating, a comment, a review, and a share or two with your friends. Your word of mouth and support is the fuel for this fire. Thanks so much, gang. Hey there, gang. Patrick King here. Every other week, I send out an exclusive email newsletter to help riders reach their goals with their horses. These 5-Bit Friday emails include evaluations of exercises and movements for your horse, rider psychology tips, my personal reviews of books or videos, important thoughts on equitation, anatomy insights, quotes to ponder, lots more. 5-Bit Friday is only available if you subscribe to our email list. If you're interested in receiving these exclusive emails, register today by visiting my website at pkhorsemanship.com/newsletter. Thank you in advance for signing up, and I hope you enjoy and gain lots of value from 5-Bit Friday.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Talking About Horses with Patrick King. If you enjoyed today's show, please leave a review and subscribe. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit pkhorsemanship.com. We'll catch you next time.